Well, from a storytelling point of view, what we're presenting is the end game. This is what's going to happen if you don't do your job, Ben. From the standpoint of Ben, this is a man who lives in 1934 and can't conceive of a weapon of mass destruction. He has no context for this event. World War II hasn't happened yet. The horrors of Nazi Germany haven't occurred yet. It's not about the deployment of the bomb. It's more about the invention of the bomb. So it focuses around Alamogordo and the Trinity test site rather than Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
My intention was to use quite a bit of stock footage, and I researched just clip after clip of stock footage and test footage shot by the government of old nuclear explosions. And those actually motivated a number of our shots and the composition in our shots. So we had both stock footage of the first beats of nuclear explosions, as well as the ground effects and blowing dust and walls of dust that really tear up all the surrounding area when a nuclear blast takes place. Using some of this stock footage, I put together animatics for the sequence to really define how we wanted to compose the shots and how the sequence would play and what a realistic, believable sequence would be with Ben experiencing this nuclear blast. A nuclear explosion is a bright burst of light and then pretty quickly turns into a dark mushroom cloud. We actually did an explosion for reference out there. We blew up 300 gallons of gasoline. But one of the things that didn't quite do enough of was give us this beyond your normal experience and what you normally see in films in terms of pyrotechnic explosions. For that portion of the blast, we used a combination of volumetric CG smoke to get the beginning of the ground effects. And then we actually used some Hubble images of the sun as a motivation for the fireball itself that actually helped create the look of the rising fireball. The most difficult shot was definitely his POV of the smoke plume rising as the ground effects are occurring and the wall is approaching him.
I wanted to start it really with something small, like just brushing your hair, and then, oh, goodness, it seems like, oh, I tugged a little bit of hair, and then looking at the comb and seeing there's a scalp on it. And then, examining the wound, like, what the hell's going on there? And finding that the flesh is really soft there, and even though you don't want to tear at it, you do tear at it. It's like picking at a scab or something. It's like, oh, God, what's going on here? To be consumed from within is sort of, I think, something we're all terrified of. We see one prophet tearing away and revealing another prophet inside, and his enemy. The flesh rotting while something else grows inside. I want to end the episode on something that really was incredibly disturbing and memorable. Poe used to call it the imp of the perverse. You know, when you're standing and looking over the rail down, say, a long drop, picturing yourself falling. And what would it be like to fall? In a way, that's the imp of the perverse at work in Brother Justin is, oh my God, how screwed up am I?
Another sort of thematic, reference was, of course, Poltergeist. We looked at that clip, and we didn't want to be gory with it, and that clip uses cutting to make the effect work. One of my motivations was to do this as a single cut and to have this whole face peel happen in one continuous shot that we never really break away from. For the primary effect, we wanted to put a Clancy Brown prosthetic onto Nick Stahl. What was a nice coincidence is Clancy Brown's head is significantly larger than Nick Stahl's head. We actually shot Nick with a prosthetic that didn't need to look that great because we shot a matching take essentially of Clancy Brown as he worked through the emotions, and then we actually used that footage, warped it and fit it to the prosthetic that needed to be digitally replaced with Clancy's real face. In this case, the tearing was much more important than the exterior itself. The photographed facial peel element is revealed over the duration of the shot as the pieces come off. I think it had the right mix of gore and realistic goo that might be there without turning into a bloody mess.
This is Brother Justin's moment where he actually sees what he's going to build in all its horror. and it's a moment of revelation for him. We're showing this creature, the Usher, and the Usher, according to management, has 1,000 different names in 1,000 different books, and what he represents to the piece is sort of this timeless character that shows up in all different cultures. He's universal. This isn't a flesh and blood character as presented in the visions, and in the first episode we just see this creature. Brother Justin basically realizes that he is the physical embodiment of this creature. Many say he's there to usher in Armageddon, and so that's what Brother Justin is seeing himself as, is the usher of the end.
The concept for the Temple of Jericho is that it's Justin's vision of the world he will build as he comes to power. The temple would be an imposing edifice, massive and strong in shape, sharp and powerful in its lines, but in the form of a traditional church or cathedral so as not to scare away the faithful. My inspiration came from several styles and examples of architecture. The Art Deco style, adopted by the rich and powerful, as manifested by the capitalists in New York, fascists in Italy, perhaps by the architect Albert Speer in Germany.
One of the first things that we wanted to do was create an ominous cloud background. One of the technical challenges in the sequence was to actually replace the sky throughout. These were shot with your typical Southern California, beautiful sunny blue skies. There were a series of shots that we did with blue screen, as well as shots without blue screen that we had to develop mats for so we could replace the sky. And we actually composited the tree from another location onto that hill. Anytime you see Brother Justin walking up to that tree, it's actually not there. The other challenging element we had in the scene is we wanted to fill the valley with this surreal fog and then have the temple just jutting out dramatically. That was a combination of cloud tank elements and CG elements.
What happened?
Them sons of bitches torched us out.
Rat fucks burned the place down.
Sabrina, you ain't just gonna leave us here now, are you? Well, what does it look like? You looking to hook up with us?
Not be persuaded.
That is the worst damn he I ever did see.
Did you ever see a good one? You out of your mind, woman. You know what kind of draw I am. Anything he gets is coming out of your cut. Fine.
The whole idea of just these two carnivals coming together and when they do, kind of brushing off on one another, that it's a small world and people connecting up. The direction I always wanted to take was more toward the humanity of these people and the things we share with them as audience members. Just the idea of these people who are working stiffs that just happen to look a lot different.
It gave us a chance to actually have carnies from our carnival talk to other carnies about their experiences, and you hear that it's just a job like any other. And this takes place during the Depression, and there were a lot of carnivals then. And there wasn't a lot of work, so this was good, steady work for people.
It's how people like this end up in a group like this, and that they really are outcasts, and they come together and form family out of it, which I think is really interesting, and the fact that they can come together and be people among each other, whereas within the society they're outcasts.
And though they are technically freaks, our belief, thematically in this whole series is that the freaks are the normal people. And it's the, normal people who are kind of bizarre.
I realized that we were going to have an unusual challenge of trying to show that the other carnival is different. We realized that if we picked a slightly different color palette, it would really help us tell the story visually. There's all these quirky moments that the clothes begin to tell the story, especially with Sophie. You can't just put a top on her, like a man's shirt. It's got to have a lot of that Eastern bohemian feeling with all the embroidery and the stuff that's woven into it to show where her mother came from and what her aesthetic sensibilities are. For Rita Sue and for Libby, I have probably 20 subcategories like Mae West and from the harlot movies of the 30s and the 20s and the silent movies and the stripper research. But then I have research of Asian harlots or Latin dancers, Hawaiian dancers, and then the research of sort of those eccentric ideas. Putting those together comes up with the ideas of like their strip costumes. With Scorpion Woman, I went to look at all my photographs of movie starlets of the time. I looked up on the internet all this research on different kinds of scorpion bugs, and thank God I found a bug that was orange. I had this beautiful fabric that I had found in my travels from Italy that looked like a reptile skin, and thank God it was white, and it was something that could be dyed. So we dyed it the reddish orange, and then we bleach stained it so that then the yellows started to come out, then dipped it in purple, which made it look brown, but in the light, the purple still showed, so it glows outside. Because when you're filming outdoors, you're constantly having to think about how those colors are going to work outside. Our he-she came in at the last minute. We didn't have time to build a costume from scratch. We had a vintage tuxedo, cut it in half, and I had this wacky other skirt with feathers that was totally rotting, and that became the other half. Because it was done on the fly, it has this sort of haphazard, like they made it on the road kind of thing.